Bill Whittle, host of Afterburner on PJTV.com, gave the keynote address at the annual Lincoln Day breakfast for the Lehigh County Republican Committee on February 27, 2010, in Fogelsville, Pennsylvania. Here's an excerpt from that speech. For more information about the Lehigh County Republican Committee, go to LehighGOP.com.
First of all, I'd like to just tell you, I'd like to start by saying how great it is to be here in Pennsylvania. I just flew in from Los Angeles, and it's always good to come home to the United States. To give you some idea of how foreign the cultural capital of the world is from the heart of the country that it so-called represents. When I landed yesterday and I looked out and saw the fields just covered in white, my first thought was, my God, that's a lot of cocaine. You know, if you live in the Lehigh Valley, within a 2-hour drive of the Lehigh Valley, you can visit Independence Hall, where the United States was invented. You can visit Valley Forge, where the United States was created. You can visit Gettysburg, where the United States was defended. You can see where the 13 stars of this country were forged and the beginning of the greatest nation in the world took place within a 2-hour drive right here from Lehigh County. Within a 2-hour drive of my apartment, you can see the alley where Sal Mineo was stabbed to death. You can see the apartment where Marilyn Monroe took an overdose. And you can see the nightclub where River Phoenix died of a speedball. So in Los Angeles, within a 2-hour drive, you can see where 13 stars committed suicide in spectacular fashion. And it's great to be in America coming from that particular location. Thank you very much. Okay, to get serious, the thing I'd like to start with today is I'd like to give you some idea of the stakes that are involved in this fight we find ourselves in. And in order to do that, I really need to talk about terms that you don't hear too often these days. I want to talk about our inheritance. I want to talk about what used to be called our birthright. These are terms that are not often used these days. You know, not too long ago, the President of the United States was asked if he believed in American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is not an opinion. American exceptionalism is a political concept. It's a term. It means something. And when he was asked if he believed in American exceptionalism, Barack Obama said, yes, I believe in American exceptionalism, in the same way that I suspect the British believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. But that wasn't the question. The question wasn't whether or not other people think their countries are exceptional. The question is the country, in fact, exceptional? And because the stakes are so high, I want to take just a moment to put some metrics down here. Things that you probably knew in your heart, but maybe you didn't fully realize. How can we determine if a country is remarkable or historically exceptional in any way? Well, there's a number of different metrics we can use. We can think about the country militarily. We can think about the country economically. We can think about the country scientifically. And we can think about the country culturally. How does America stand in these 4 categories? Well, militarily, the United States of America has never been matched in terms of its relative power compared to the rest of the world. It's never happened in history. And certainly from a historical point of view, that would be enough to say this is an exceptional country. All throughout history, there have been a number of countries that are vying for power, but no one has ever stood astride history, the way the United States does. You know, at the end of World War II, the world was in ruins. The United States had, I think at the end of World War II, and counting the escort carriers in the Pacific, we had 40 aircraft carriers. We had fleets of B-29 bombers and atomic bombs and the will to use them. The only other power left in the world was the Soviet Union, which had been absolutely decimated, had some tactical forces, had some tanks, but no strategic capability. At the end of 1945, the United States of America, militarily, could have planted the American flag in every capital in the world, and no one could have done a single thing about it. And what did we do? We came back home. We sent those bombers to the scrapyard. We sent the battleships to the scrapyard, and we went about our business. By the way, we spent huge sums of money helping our former adversaries get on their feet. Militarily, there's never been anything like this country ever in history. And for people who say, well, that was World War II, the greatest generation, we're not like that anymore, I'd like to remind you that many people talk about the Iraq War as a war for oil, but during the first Gulf War, when Saddam set those oil fields on fire and hightailed it back to Iraq, the United States military sat on the richest oil fields in the world unopposed. We were all by ourselves on those oil fields, and what did we do? We put out the fires, and then we came home. That's who we are. That's what we do. We are not only the most amazing military force in history, we're the most moral, decent people that have ever held a sword, and that is our birthright here in America. That's one part of what's at stake today. Economically, how do we compare? We're often told we're 5% of the world's population, we use this percent of our resources or that percent of the pollution, or whatever the case may be. But the fact is, this 5% of the world population is responsible for 25% of the world's economic output. The United States, depending on how you measure it, has 4 times the economy of our closest competitor, China, which has 4 times our population. We have 25% of their population. We produce at least 4 times their output. That's even today. If you look at a list of Swedish inventions on Google, taking Sweden as an example of the kind of welfare state that the current administration wants to turn us into, Swedish inventions take about 3 pages on Google. American inventions take 45 pages on Google. 45 pages, just about anything of any value whatsoever has been invented here in the United States of America. That's our economic exceptionalism, which is, again, unparalleled. And just that alone, just that by itself, would make us the most remarkable country in the history of the world. What about scientifically? Well, every year, science produces a number of research papers, and in each one of these research papers is something called a scientific citation. It's probably useful to think of that as a unit of science. It's a unit of science. Our next closest competitor, the number 2 country, is Great Britain, which in a 10-year period produced about 8,000 scientific citations. During that time, the United States of America produced 37,263, more than 6 times the closest competitor by every measure. The world's science is done here in the United States, and all of the inventions that come out of the United States are a result of our unique political system. Scientifically, the United States of America is exceptional. There's never been anything like it in history. And finally, culturally, if we were to look at the United States as a civilization culturally, what kind of impact do we have? We often talk about societies that have a great cultural impact. Well, the top selling 7 albums are American albums, but a better metric is, of the top 50 grossing movies in the world, in the history of the world, the top 50 grossing movies in the world, every single one of them is the product of an American studio, and every single one of them is in English. Every one of them. The United States is remarkable, exceptional by every measure, militarily, economically, scientifically, and culturally. That is our birthright. That is what we inherited. That is what has been put into our hands by the sacrifices of our forefathers. But, we are in some real trouble. We're in trouble because all of the things that we've believed our entire lives have made us so successful that we no longer need to believe in them. We have become so isolated by the reality and the brutality of the world outside our borders that we just take this for granted. We just think it's the way things are. It doesn't require any maintenance, and it doesn't require any work. So what do we see happening? Well, militarily, we have a 30-year advantage in stealth technology with the F-22 fighter, which is the most remarkable jet aircraft. I'm a pilot myself, and I'm here to tell you that the F-22 fighter is beyond question the most remarkable advance in technology in the history of warfare. We've decided to stop producing those fighters because the president has determined that we won't be fighting those kind of wars anymore. If I had the ability to read the future like that, I certainly would be in the speaking business. We have a missile defense system. Yes, well said. And that's a lot of jobs. And when that line shuts down, it can't be restarted. Once that line is shut down, it's over. It's done.
Speaking as an F-15 pilot, I agree with you.
God bless you, sir. They used to send 14 Eagles out to try and shoot down 2 F-22s, and they never saw them. They just disappeared. In the simulations, they just never saw them. We have a missile defense system. We have an airborne laser system as part of a coordinated missile defense system, which is purely defensive, that shoots down missiles from 500-600 miles away, canceled by the president, who's determined that there's no missile threat to the United States. Economically, what kind of shape are we in? Regulations, I don't have to tell businessmen about regulations. I don't have to tell you about the regulations that choke this country like a kudzu vine down in the south. It is choking the innovation out of this country. It's making it hard to start businesses. And by the way, America has the second highest tax rate in the industrialized world. And that's not going to continue. We're not going to have these economic innovations like that. It's just not going to happen. They used to rate countries, they still do, on their freedom. And America, for the first time in our history, you'll be pleased to know, has been downgraded from a free country to a mostly free country. We are now officially, by the people that measure these things, we're no longer the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're the land of the mostly free and the home of the frequently brave. And it's going to continue to get worse unless we do something.